Okay, let's review this game. So white played knight f3, and this is a very interesting opening, Reti opening. And I like to say some words of this opening and compare it with like very popular one like e4, d4. So usually like white play e4 or d4, push the pawn to control the center. Um, so the difference between Reti opening and the rest of the two is white wants to um, being flexible in the opening. What does it mean? So white doesn't hurry pushing the center pawn and moving the knight instead. So white wants to look at the board and see how it goes and then decide how should I set up a structure. So this is what I said, like flexible. So white don't want to like fix a structure at the very beginning. So for example, so actually it's the same thing for black. So after f9, f6, black also have quite a few decent choices. For example, black can also play knight f6, copying the moves, or play d5 to control the center, or even e6. This is a quite solid move. You can play d5 later, or you can even play f5, knight f6. So in this game, we play d5. This is a good move, and control the center. Why not? And so in this case, white could, for example, play d4, and now we have queen's opening. Or, I mean, if you play d4, and if black play like e6, for example, and c4, this is queen's gambit decline. But if white didn't play d4, white can play g3, bishop g2, and now we have king's Indian. So that's what I said. White can be flexible. White can choose the opening as the game goes, and this is the mindset you will see throughout the game. So g3, white chose to turn the game into king's Indian, and c5, black keeps pushing the pawn, control the center. There's no problem with that. Bishop g2, and we play knight c6. And so e6 is also something we can consider. Of course, we cannot push the pawn e5 because e5 is controlled. But the question is, if we play knight c6, we cannot move the knight to d7. So we can also, being flexible in opening. I mean, knight f6 or e6. Both moves are decent moves. If you like check the engine, they're quite close. Knight f6 is also good. And also I think knight f6 is better than knight c6. Because as I said, if you look at these two knights and ask yourself, so what are the squares you could potentially move, for example, b8 knight? And I would say either c6 or d7 could be the option. It depends on how well the position evolves. But for the g8 knight, I would say knight f6 is quite is more likely than, for example, moving the knight to e7. So in this case, moving the g8 knight first, because this knight is more like determined when it comes to the position in the future. So we can move that first. And then, as the game develops, we can decide moving the knight to c8, or c6, or d7. So I'm not sure if my point is clear. Knight c6, d4, and this is a very important position I would like to highlight. So in this game, we take the pawn. I mean, taking the pawn is okay. It's not a big problem, as I said. But we need to evaluate what did we get and what did our opponent get after we take the d4 pawn. So first of all, I think the advantage for white is white can improve the position of the f3 knight. The knight moved from f3 to d4, moving from f3 to the center, and also supported by the queen. So this is a good side for our opponent. But the downside for white, also the good side for us, is after taking the e5 pawn, After taking the d4 pawn, the e5 square is not controlled by the pawn anymore. So in order to make our moves consistent, the best move turned out to be e5. Because that is the reason we exchange with the pawn, right? If we only make our opponent's knight to a better position, that is not our purpose. Our purpose should be something good for us, and we should utilize that. That is, the e5 square is a place to go. So we can play e5. If I take the knight, we can take that back with the pawn. And if I play c4 to attack the pawn, we can play knight f6. And for example, if white play knight c3 to keep attacking our pawn. So what can we do? Can we play bishop e6 to strengthen the pawn, and also rook b8. We can counter attack at the b file. And why this is like better? The reason is we didn't play knight f6 before knight c6, so we didn't move this knight first. So that makes our d5 pawn. So I want to emphasize this. The reason we didn't play, or the result of us not playing f6 is we don't have a defender at f6. So in this case, once we exchange the pawns, you see, the d5 pawn only have a queen as a defender. So in this case, when we move knight f6, we are a little bit slow in developing pawn, in protecting pawn. So my point is, first of all, it's better to move the f6 knight, as I said, move the knight f6 because the g8 knight is more determined. And once we move the c6 knight after d4, actually it's not good timing to exchanging the pawn, or it's not a good timing to open up the d file, because once we open up the d file, the d5 pawn is under attack. So the best move is either move knight f6 or e6. But once we take in the pawn, if we take the pawn, we should push the pawn to e5 to kick a knight, because the e5 square is not controlled by the d4. So there are a bunch of things we need to think. So we need to be sensitive of how the pieces move around at the chessboard. Okay, so this is very subtle and very tiny, but this is very important if you want to be a high-level chess player. So okay, so we play e6. I understand this move. We want to protect d5. Yeah, this is this makes sense here because these two pieces are attacking our pawn, so we want to protect that. But if we plan to play e6, so I will play that without trading the pawns, because once we play e6, this trade only favors white because it makes the knight into a better position, and also it opens up the diagonal for the dark square bishop. So if we play e6, we don't have to trade in the pawn, at least at this moment. So we trade the pawns and e6, and white plays c4. So this attack on d5 is quite pressing. So queen b6. So now we have we don't have the queen protecting the pawn, so maybe the d5 will be even weaker. So actually defending d5, I think this is more important than moving the queen. So moving the queen to d5, forcing the knight to trade. It looks like the pawn is solid, but there will be another weakness, that is this diagonal. Because if white taking the pawn, maybe not right now, but just imagine if white taking our d5 pawn, we need to choose. If we take that with the e pawn, so these two pawns are kind of isolated. I mean, they are protecting each other, but these two pawns are separated with the rest of the pawn. And also the c pawn, the d pawn, both of them are at the semi-open file. Both of them are really good targets for white. But if we take up the c pawn, this diagonal is quite weak. And I'm pretty sure white will utilize that if we don't defend this diagonal. And in this game we defend 9, that is good. Strengthen the d5, and we should castle as soon as possible. Because if we can castle, make it king to the king side, this problem at this diagonal will be resolved. Now c3, white add another piece, attacking d5, bishop a6. I can see what is purpose coming from. We want to attack c4. We want to be aggressive. That's a good like mindset. But we should also be aware of this diagonal. So this is how I said. This is what I said in this opening. White is very flexible. So actually, at the beginning, white doesn't have any white doesn't have any target to attack. But now, first of all, d5 is one of the target. White put a lot of effort, 4 pieces aiming at d5. Now black has built up a quite good structure to defend the d5, but white will figure out there will be another weakness white attack. So white can divide a piece as the weakness like becoming clear and clear. And also another good side for this opening is white make the king safe at the very beginning. So white can push pawns and open files, whatever he or she wants, because the king is safe. So if knight, okay, so that's the timing, and white exchange the pawns and queen a4. Now white becomes way better than us because this diagonal is really hard to defend. Knight d7, that's the only move if we don't want to move the king. Bishop e3, white keep developing pieces and attacking our queen. That's really tough for us. Queen b7, rook. You see, so white, the moves from white, all of the moves are quite consistent. Attacking d5 and potentially sacrificing is coming. If bishop to d5, that's disaster. Attacking these 2 pieces, and also the rook and the queen can work on d7 because d5 is open. But we haven't castle. So now I would say white is winning. So rook ba, we want to, I see the point. We want to, move the rate out of this diagonal. But another route to c1. Actually, I think white can sacrifice. Bishop d5, attack the queen. Where can we move the queen? Queen to b5 to block the move, but queen to e4, that's a check. Bishop e7 is coming, and bishop c6, and we're losing basically. In this game, white keep developing pieces. White is very patient, developing another piece. Bishop b5. Yeah, it's really hard to defend. I think white is winning. Exchange all the pieces. Rook c8, that's a brilliant move. King e7, checking. Yeah. Okay, actually I think white can do better than that. And just take the wait, let me see. White can take the queen, right? And take the pawn. White has this two. If you take this one and keep opening, so these positions are really of the piece are really awkward. So, and also so white can do something better. White shouldn't shouldn't let the so this pawn structure is less as good as being collected. So if white can take the queen and bishop a7, white is way better. E4 is quite good, and we should give up this pawn. Maybe bishop queen f6. We should divide this bishop and the rook as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will be a huge problem. Check. Pieces are pinned. Actually, after trading the pieces, white have this pass pawn. White is still winning. Okay. So so we lost. We will lose the knight. But even though we protect, the queen will promote. So that's it. We should focus on the opening and be very sensitive about how the piece is changing on the board. Because as I said, this opening is very flexible. It doesn't have very strict book move. It requires both players to be very sensitive of the position of pieces. That's it.